Hey Rocky Pete, great to be with you one more time. My name is Joey, I'm on staff here at the church, and today is our first of 2 encounter services that we're very excited about this week. This is Encounter Week for us at Rocky Peak, and so we've had this tradition lately of really spending some time diving in deeper to whatever it is that we're going to be talking about at Encounter, and so we've been doing that all week long, talking about the parables of Jesus and how they express and explain really lofty and exciting ideas about God's kingdom. And so to do that one more time, I'm here with Joel Enyart. Hi Joel.
Hello Joey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
We're talking about Jesus' parables, and today we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the shorter statements of Jesus. You know, when I think of parables, I tend to think of these longer stories that Jesus used, these like little narrative tales, but there's also kind of these little short sound bites that he often used. So what are some examples of those that Jesus would use when he was teaching?
Yeah, Jesus uses all sorts of different kinds of phrases or analogies to kind of do that we call parables. Michael unpack some of these concepts like similes and sound bites. I call them bite-sized almost. So like the kingdom of God's like a mustard seed or new wine or new patches. And he's telling these little sound bites in response to certain things that'll come his way or what'll happen. And I think sometimes we can be, especially if we're familiar with faith and Christianity, we know the soundbite.
Totally.
But we don't often understand the meaning or the impact of it, which is why it's always important to go into the context of what's going on there. Because oftentimes when Jesus uses these, he's responding to something that just happened.
Oh, a question or a moment or situation. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's almost like these sound bites are like so memorable that they have just kind of seeped into culture everywhere. And so people might kind of have these little like phrases that they know that Jesus said, but don't understand what the actual context was. So do you have any examples of like how that might go wrong and how to correct it?
Well, I think like you take the concept of when he's talking about new wine. So he's responding to the religious leadership of his time being upset that his disciples aren't fasting the way John's disciples, John the Baptist, his cousin's disciples would be fasting, or their disciples would be fasting. And so Jesus' response to them is like, this is not the time for them to be fasting. And he actually starts by talking about the bridegroom is here. So he's talking about, I'm the bridegroom who's come. The church, everything, like these beautiful images. And then he says, like, there's a new thing going on. And he said, like, you can't put new wine in old wineskins, which for us doesn't necessarily fit the way our wine works.
Totally.
But back then, you'd pour wine into wine skins that could ferment and expand. But once one was done, you don't put new wine in it or it'll burst and ruin it.
Gotcha.
And he's using this to kind of really challenge where they're stuck in their traditions and the things that they're doing. And they've lost the heart for why they're doing it. And they're so stuck and set in their ways that they're actually missing the kingdom is coming. They're missing the thing that they've been longing for and hoping for. And so here's Jesus using this picture of that, right? Like you see that as he's talking with them. And I think one of the things I really love about that is that when you understand the context, it causes us to step back and go, hey, where am I stuck in doing my religious things or my church things that are maybe good things, but I'm so stuck in them that I'm actually missing the new thing God's up to.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Yeah, I think Jesus was very intentional about the way that he used these parables. And I know that, we talked on Monday with Michael about kind of the disciples' expectations about what God's kingdom was going to look like when it came, and what Jesus had to offer, what Jesus had in mind was a little bit different, or maybe a lot of it different than what they had in mind. So are there any statements Jesus made that really kind of helped them and can help us understand what he was picturing when he thought of his Father's kingdom?
Well, I think like each one of these little, especially this little sound bites, are helpful windows, right? So like we've seen like the mustard seed side, especially in the study that was being done today. He actually uses it twice. So I'll talk about the one that we looked at in our study. He uses the mustard seed as that tiny little thing that starts but grows into a very large tree compared to its size. And I think there's such a beautiful imagery that the kingdom will start small. And I think that's true of our own experience in terms of entering into the new life that God calls us into. It's like you just kind of come to faith, especially if you come to faith later in life, and it's like this exciting thing, but you don't really realize what's happening, the work of what God's doing, and over the course of years, this transformative thing begins to take place within you. And I think helping his disciples understand, my kingdom is an inside-out kingdom, right? Where they had this idea of overthrow Rome, get established, we're in your cabinet, let's go, which I think was their paradigm had to shift from being, like the top of the class and all those things into, oh, I'm a participant in a kingdom that is in process of becoming. And so I think for them, there must have been great comfort on the other side of Easter and all those things where they're like, oh, this is going to take time. But that's what he said. It's a mustard seed, and it's becoming true in my life.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Are there any of these statements that you just want to share here at the end that is maybe meaningful to you that you're excited for people to read in this study?
Yeah, well, he uses mustard seed in two different contexts. So this isn't actually in the study, but it's my own personal favorite. I guess if you had to pick, like, what's the one would be where Jesus talks about faith the size of a mustard seed. And again, I think that's one that we're so familiar with that we can often maybe misunderstand what that means.
Totally.
And so again, this is where context matters. And so Jesus teaches this moment in response to this father who comes bringing his son who's possessed demonically. And he's like, hey, your disciples couldn't help me. And Jesus gets so frustrated. He's like, how long will I put up with you guys? And then he deals with the demon and sets this kid free. And then his disciples come to him later and like, how come we couldn't do that? And Jesus' response was, because you didn't have enough faith. And then he says, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could say to this mountain, move over here, and it would. Nothing would be impossible for you. So that's the context of this teaching. And it's such an interesting thing, because I think if we understand what he's talking about, it doesn't take very much faith to see the power of the kingdom move in our life. But I think the mistake that we can make is that, like, somehow faith is my superpower.
Totally.
So it's like, it's not faith in faith. It's faith in who, faith in what.
Oh, yeah. That's
and
good.
If I have my faith placed in him, then I can step into the things that I don't often understand or seem scary. And I think, like, and it doesn't take very much faith to step into the power of the kingdom. And I think I love that, because it's so encouraging, because I think we look at things in this world that feel like they're beyond us, or God calls us to obedience, or God calls us to take what seems like a terrifying step, and you're like, I don't know if I can. And I always come to this parable because I think, like, yeah, I probably can't, but he can. So I'm eyes on you, Jesus. I'm going to come with whatever faith I have, trusting that you'll move, and then we get to see kingdom power at work in our lives.
Yeah.
And so I love just that imagery, because I think Paul will write, like, with fear and trembling, work out your salvation. It's God who works within you to will and to act. And so it's like, oh, my part is trust. My part is faithfulness. My part is obedience. And then the rest is to watch the kingdom of God unfold as the power of God is at work. His spirit in me, listening and following Jesus.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Cool. Joel, thank you so much for being here. Thank you guys for joining us once again this week as we're getting ready for our encounter services, just really processing and thinking about God's kingdom and just how good it is and how excited we are to see it unleashed here at Rocky Peak. I hope you can join us tonight or tomorrow night. We've got two services. They are identical. They're at 7 p.m. Wednesday and Thursday here at the church. We hope to see you there.